Welcome to Gate City Chronicles. I'm Senator Kevin Avard, your host, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that everybody's talking about because of certain movies, and there's a lot of concern, a lot of rumors, a lot of push in one particular direction, and it seems as though if you talk against the narrative that's out in the public purview, that you put yourself at risk, and we're not woke on this show, so I want to welcome Stephen Scaer for coming on the show. And Stephen's been very active with regard to protecting the children from the onslaught of over-sexualization in our community. I mean, you're seeing it with Disney, you're seeing it in a lot of the broadcasts, and so Stephen has been out there speaking about issues that whether it's puberty blockers or the trans invading the innocence of children at a very young age. He's been pretty much out there by himself, it seems, and it takes a lot of courage to stand up on principles that you believe in. That seems to be going against the tide. The narrative out there is that this is okay, for children to have sex at young ages and to be over sexualized, and people are saying, well, they're not. It's just it's their nature. Well, that's not necessarily true, and so we wanted to have him on the show, and he could share some things with you. And welcome, Stephen, for coming on the show, and basically for being bold enough to get out there and speak your mind. There are some people that are going to disagree with you, and throw hate at you and say, well, you're the hater. But it seems to be projection. You disagree with this over-sexualization of children.
Well, specifically, I'm going out and talking to people about the dangers of the gender, of the sexual transition of minors, using medication to do that, and the falsehoods that are pushed by the industry. There's big money in this. And of course, there's an ideological push too, that transgenderism, I would say, is a religion. And today, there was some really good news. In the Wall Street Journal, there was a letter written by 21 experts in gender transition and treatment. And they came from 7 different countries, and they were replying to the president of the American Endocrine Society. And they said there's no evidence that these treatments, transing kids, reduces suicides or even improves mental health. And that's the message that I'm getting across. That if you've been to any of the state hearings, which of course you have, the message you keep hearing is if you don't trans kids, they're going to commit suicide. And that's a horrible thing to tell parents. Do what I say or your kid's going to kill himself. There's no evidence for that. And the other bit that they're saying that isn't true at all is puberty blockers are safe and reversible.
Yeah, and they're not.
They're not. And some of the videos that I'm sharing with you today, one of them is from Marcy Bowers, and she's the head of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. And when people say they're certified, they're following these standards, the WPATH, they set the standards. And she said that children who start these medications at Tanner stage 2, which is age 9 to 11, that of the boys, none of them has ever been able as an adult to go on and experience an orgasm. Now, Dartmouth Health, the leader of their program, John Turco, has said that he starts kids at 10 and a half. So that means when they say there's no side effects, that these kids won't have any sexual functions. Now, supposedly, this is just to give them time to find out if they're really trans, whatever that means. But we know that at least 95% through 3 different studies of kids that start on puberty blockers will go on to say for the long run, and they'll take the opposite sex hormones. So that means all these kids that we're talking about, all these young kids going on puberty blockers, we're destroying their sexual function. Jeremy Carswell, who heads the program for the gender program at Boston Children's Hospital, so one of the top experts, has also said adamantly that even the kids up to 12, 13 that start on the puberty blockers and stay on them, they'll be infertile. They'll never be able to have kids. So when you hear from experts saying, especially from Dartmouth Health, say these are reversible, these are some really major things, not having fertility or sexual function.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. Getting back to the suicide issue, I happen to sit on the HHS Oversight Committee, and they, the department did come in and talk a little bit about the suicide rate with some of the kids, and it seems as though that topic never came up. What came up as one of the causes or the attempts was the cell phone. And the algorithms and the hook of these kids spending hours and hours and hours on the cell phones, and how the algorithms are adapting to each child. Now, the kids that seem to be most at risk are 9th grade girls. They seem to be most at risk, and I don't know if it's the bullying or whatnot, but they're the ones that are contemplating the most, and it had nothing to do with the sexual identities or anything to that nature, which was very, very interesting. And of course, with this whole push on AI and all these algorithms getting out there, the kids don't realize that as they're looking at something on their cell phone, you're reading the cell phone, but the cell phone's reading you. What do you like? And it's like a drug. And you keep scrolling, and it's feeding you what you want. Mm-hmm. And you're identifying with that, but for some reason there's the personal growth as your individual, it seems to be altered or something to the effect where you become depressed, and so that is an issue that we need to consider with the kids over usage of these things, and these things of course invading. I don't know what your identity. I don't know how to respond to that and tell the kids, hey, you can't do that. But getting back to this trans situation, I mean, we seem to be pushing it everywhere in the communities. It seems a phenomenon that when I was a kid, I never even heard of this. Where people are struggling with their identities. Well, was everybody in the closet? Brown University, I believe 40% of their students are now trans. And what's going on?
Well, first of all, let's get back to suicide, because that's a huge issue.
Right.
Because at a recent State House hearing regarding a bill to ban the medical transition of minors, I heard the word suicide. I did a check to see how many times it was used in the transcript of the hearing, and suicide was mentioned 66 times. And it started with a representative from Dartmouth. One of the first testimonies was saying that 41% of trans-identified youth seriously consider suicide. And then she turned around and said, imagine if 4 out of 10 of you tried to commit suicide. Well, those are two different figures. One is thinking about suicide, the other is attempting suicide. And where they get these astronomical figures is there's an advocacy group, the Trevor Project, that probably everyone's heard about. So they send out an annual survey, and it's solicited. They look for people to fill it out. It's not random. And they advertise for it on social media sites where kids who identify as LGBT would go. And then they ask them to self-report on this. And that's where they get these astronomical numbers. Mm. So they come up with 41%. Are you familiar with Tavistock?
No.
Tavistock was the world's largest gender clinic, and it was in London. And it just recently closed. It closed in spring because of some of the things that were going on are just the same standard practice we have here in New Hampshire. But they did an analysis of the suicides there because there are so many of them. They looked at over 15,000 children, minors, over 10 years. So let's see what's the suicide rate. And they're going to look at the kids that are waiting for services during that time, and then the kids that are receiving services. So 10 years, 15,000 kids, 4 suicides. Now, 1 suicide is too many, but that translated to an annual suicide rate of 0.013%. It's higher than average, But these kids have a lot of comorbid problems that are often untreated. Anorexia, PTSD is huge, autism is huge, depression and anxiety. But it's nowhere near this 41%. And that's why if you look at the British National Health Service, they'll say suicide among transgender youth is extremely rare. And Finland's leading gender expert said that it's just irresponsible to say that these children are more vulnerable to suicide, or to tell parents that they're going to commit suicide if you don't trans them, or these treatments alleviate suicide. But parents are getting blackmailed all the time, and the kids are hearing it. What we do know for anything, that suicide spreads as a social contagion, right? So if you want to make kids suicidal, tell them they're suicidal. And the kids at the hearings and anywhere when they're going to these groups, they're hearing all the time that they're suicidal. You've probably heard at some of these hearings too, if you pass this bill, there'll be blood on your hands. And the kids are hearing this, that it normalizes suicide if this doesn't happen. And it's a horrible thing to say.
You know, it was just a few years ago we were talking about dysphoria in HHS, and you know, I don't hear that word anymore.
No, it goes beyond gender dysphoria. They'll just talk about what a trans child is. And I've stood on the streets. By now I've probably had thousands of conversations about this. And I'll often get back to people say, you hate trans kids, or what about the kids that are really transgender? And I'll ask, what is a transgender child? I mean, I get the bit about your gender identity doesn't match your sex assigned at birth. Okay, sex is assigned at birth. Does that mean that these are kids where the sex was misassigned, and that's their problem? And how does that work? And then we'll go on at length about the intersex conditions, about disorders of sexual development. And somehow they get assigned their brain is in the wrong body, things that don't make sense. We'll even be talking about things on the spectrum between a cow and a bull, and a rooster and a hen. I had a conversation with a psychologist recently, and we came down to these things, and I asked, are there animals in the spectrum between a bull and a cow? Are there transgender bovine? She responded, I don't think we know the internal workings of these, emotional workings of these animals. And she was perfectly serious. And this was a psychologist that worked with them. But even you ask someone a gender identity, what is a gender identity? And it always comes down to stereotypes. And you can see from one of the videos I gave you from Jeremy Carswell, who again heads the gender program at Boston Children's Program. She talks about kids knowing from the womb that they're trans. And here's how you can tell if a child might be trans. If a boy fights getting a haircut, if a boy or girl plays with opposite gender toys, if a girl tries to pee standing up. So it's entirely stereotypes. And Boston Children's Hospital is seeing children, they say, as young as 2 or 3. But it's nothing but gender identities are nothing but stereotypes. And something I get on the street is, why do you hate kids that don't fit stereotypes? People are really, really different, and why don't you accept that? It's people like you. I often get people like you in your sign. That's why people are killing themselves. And I'm absolutely against judging people by stereotypes. I've never heard a story, when I hear the stories about young kids getting gender transition treatments, I never hear a story that doesn't begin with, we always knew he was a girl. He made dresses out of tea towels. He played with dolls. He danced to Madonna or some such thing, or Taylor Swift. So these are kids that we don't fit gender stereotypes. I'm also told, hey, why do you hate the gay community and the trans community? One of my friends I'm working with really closely is gay, and you've probably heard about gays against groomers.
Yes.
So these are lots of gay people fighting this, and this is for a very specific reason. That we've got 12 studies today that show if you just give kids the love and support they need, but don't tell them they're the opposite sex, Let them be where they want to be. Let boys play with dolls. Let girls get dirty and climb trees and play with Tonka trucks.
They used to be called tomboys.
Yeah. And a lot of these girls, they're lesbians, but they were also tomboys too. But the studies that we've got, at least 12 to date now, that show us that if you just leave these kids alone, 4 out of 5 of them they'll grow up and they'll be fine with their bodies, but they will be gay. The majority will be gay. And so a lot of the gay people look at this as a really, real cruel conversion therapy. Mm-hmm. So they hate this stuff.
Yeah, I think the log cabin Republicans actually came out, or they're considering of coming out and resisting a lot of this push and the grooming of these young kids. I just think it's so unnecessary to be. In my belief, in my faith, I believe this is confusion, mm-hmm. And I have a right for that. I have a right to believe biblically what is right and wrong. It's not what I say; it's what I build my foundation, my moral compass is to follow after certain things. And of course, in the scriptures, it does talk about this is confusion. Mm-hmm. It's confusion, and but that's my faith, and I have a right to that and to believe that, and I don't push my faith on anybody mm-hmm. ever. Because I think that is wrong. It's unfruitful, and we see a history of that. Whether it's the Spanish Inquisition, it just throughout history, people that push their religion on individuals, it doesn't turn out good. It's something that comes from the will, and I believe from God. However, it seems as though this movement is pushing their will on children, mm-hmm. and the children are innocent, and they'll go where they're led, either by you're this, and or you're not this, or you're fitting a certain stereotype, so we're going to push you in that particular direction. And I think you do irreparable damage to these kids. Let them grow up and to be who they are, but pushing it on them. And of course, then we had the parental rights bill. The whole idea with the teachers not disclosing to the parents what's going mm-hmm. on at the schools, that there was such a hatred for that, and we're calling it an anti-trans phobia type of thing and hateful thing. Because the teachers were not telling the parents what's going on in the schools. There's something wrong with that. There's something extremely wrong with that.
Now, the comments about religion, I get those a lot. When I'm just standing on the sidewalk with my sign don't say anything about religion. Mm-hmm. I don't mention religion because arguing from authority is a logical fallacy. Unless you share the same authority, it doesn't do you any good. Mm-hmm. So if I'm a Christian and someone else isn't a Christian, then they're going to say, well, your sky god isn't going to tell me what to do. And that's a common phrase. So I don't do that. I always argue regarding the science and the research, as I've just discussed, and that's pretty consistent.
Right.
But transgenderism is very much a religion. When you talk about it, for one of my signs is, no child is born in the wrong body. How can that be? And you can't say a child is born in the wrong body without a belief that somehow we have gendered souls. And these kids can realize through some self-actualization that I am a boy. What's a boy? They don't know. I am a girl. And that it's manifested, as we've said, through stereotypes. And that's why we have Boston Children's Hospital saying these children know from birth or from the womb whether they're a boy or a girl. That's an entirely religious idea. Mm-hmm. And the other part of this religion is we have these gendered souls or gender identifications, and they love the words authentic selves. Now, if you tamper at all with these authentic selves, these gender identities, then you will risk this kid having severe depression, and maybe even committing suicide, right? That's why they love suicide. So it's safer to tamper the body, to give these kids these medications that are almost certainly going to destroy their fertility, their sexual function, and we know down the road probably their bone health too, thrombosis, heart disease, cancer, early menopause. Early menopause is likely to bring along and early dementia. And that when you talk about the pain that some of these, some of the friends I correspond with, the pain they have from that early menopause and vaginal atrophy, it's just awful. But it's better to harm this body than touch this soul, this gender identity. It's
which
very much
which
religion.
goes to the fact that it is religion, and this isn't the first time in history. This is something from ancient history that it was going on in certain gods, if you will, were able to convert one individual from one sex to another sex, and I'm not going to get into that, but it is something that has happened of ancient time, ancient history. And it just seems like it's coming back. But as soon as you say soul, you're getting into the spiritual. You're getting into the abstract, if you will. Well, what is a soul? What is a spirit?
And that's and they don't use the word soul. They'll say gender identity, but what's a gender identity? They won't tell you. But with my sign, no child is born in the wrong body, they'll ask me about what my religion teaches if there's a soul separate from the body. And it's like, I'm not talking about religion. Why are you talking about religion? Because it's the only way it makes sense. Mm-hmm. But that's why you see this passion. And when you go to these hearings and see some of the people speak, or when you're sitting across from Antifa and their friends, the people that are pushing this, it's just demonic. Mm-hmm. And why it's absolutely irrational, why they won't tolerate anyone who speaks the opposite. Yeah, because that's heresy, and because this whole movement depends on this, first of all, this religious idea, but also just coercion, just shutting anyone up.
And that's just it. It's just like ancient, with the religions in the past, if you didn't go along with them, they persecuted you. Basically, you can go back to the Spanish Inquisition, you can go to any period in history, right? Mm-hmm. And whether it's a Puritan, whether it's on and on and on. And if you didn't follow the suit, then you were persecuted, and you were of a particular demonic whatever. So if you don't follow pattern with what's going on in today's narrative, now all of a sudden you're a hater. You're the bad person because, you have a mind of your own and you think on your own and you don't necessarily agree. But that doesn't fit their narrative. And so therefore they label you and persecute you for disagreeing with them. It's just
something else going on there.
There is definitely something else going on.
Which is the cognitive dissonance. That if it's something, if I told you, Kevin, I really think the earth is flat, you'd say, okay, Stephen, yeah, sure, the earth is flat. But say if I said, Kevin, I think your wife is cheating on you. Now, I know she's not, but that's just an example. And maybe someone did have, they've got this doubts about. That's where people would freak out. If you're close to home and you're trying really hard to believe something that may not be true. As a special educator, this was a really tough thing to talk about, because I would see kids that were getting, say, drug involved and seeing the signs. Yeah. And the parents kind of knew too, but if I brought it up, they would be shouting and swearing, and every time I saw that, I was right, because the signs are really clear. If these people had to think about what they're doing, which is destroying children's sexual function, destroying their ability to have future relationships, to have children, destroying their health in the long run, if they thought about this, and at some level they do, it's just too painful. Right. So they lash out.
And they'll never turn back and come. Maybe it'll be a rarity for them to admit, well, you know what, maybe I made the wrong choice.
And that's
I made the wrong choice.
And that's why I've got to be really careful when I'm on the sidewalk about the people that just blow up, just start swearing at me and shouting at me. I'll listen, because more often than not, that's someone who's been hurt by this, or as a family member who's been hurt by this. And if I go ahead and I take the shouting and the swearing and just listen, then I can hear that story. And more often than not, we can find some common ground.
We have a couple of minutes left. Just a quick synopsis. I mean, what's following this interview are some clips. The first clip is about...
Well, the first clip is from Marcy Bowers, who's the head of WPATH that we talked about before, sets the worldwide standards. And Marcy Bowers identifies as a transgender woman, does bunches of surgeries, genital surgeries on people. And Marcy Bowers says that these kids will never go on to be able to have orgasms. She talks about young men, no exceptions.
Second clip.
The second clip is Jeremy Carswell saying that the kids that start even as late as 12 or 13 on puberty blockers and stay on them, they're going to be infertile, permanently infertile.
Third clip.
The third clip is again Jeremy Carswell in a promotional video from Boston Children's Hospital. And Jeremy Carswell says that if your son fights getting a haircut, plays with opposite sex toys, your toddler girl tries to pee standing up, then it's signs that these kids are transgender and they want to start seeing them at Boston Children's Hospital.
And the next two?
Well, those are the main three I'd like to get across. Yep. We have another one, if you have room for it, that talks about children knowing from the womb, literally the words of a Boston Children's Hospital, that kids are transgender. From Boston Children's Hospital, a lot of people say that what I'm saying isn't happening. Boston Children's Hospital telling 15-year-old girls that they're eligible for gender-affirming double mastectomies. 15-year-old girls getting their breasts cut off.
So, as the public views these aren't endorsing of what they're saying, but you're basically exposing what is being said.
Yes, I stick to the studies, and I work really hard to look at the information that the people that are promoting us, the information that they're giving to share with other people. I make it a point to know their studies and their points of view.
How do people get in touch with you?
SidewalkSteve.org.
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 And I really appreciate you coming on the show. I know it takes a lot of courage to get out there and kind of go against the wave. I've known you for a while. I don't see you as a hateful person on any level. More of an intellectual. But I think it takes a lot of courage to get out there and speak up for what you believe. And to call you a hater is wrong.
That's projection.
Yeah, it is. And so thank you for coming on. And you're looking out for the kids. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, we're going to end the maiming and sterilization of children.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right. We're just going to say goodbye, and thank you for watching Gate City Chronicles. If you want to come on the show and talk about whatever you want to talk about, you're very welcome to. We're here for you. So until next week, thanks for watching.
So most of the patients that we have in the GEMS clinic actually know their gender, usually around the age of puberty, but a good portion of children do know as early as seemingly from the womb, and they will usually express their gender identity as very young children, some as soon as they can talk. They might say phrases such as I'm a girl, or I'm a boy, or I'm going to be a woman, or I'm going to be a mom. Kids know very, very early. So in the GEMS clinic, we see a variety of young children all the way down to ages 2 and 3, and usually up to the ages of 9. When they come into the clinic, they'll see one of our psychologists, and we'll be talking to them about their gender. We'll be talking to their family about how to best support that child and how to make sure that that child has the space and support to explore their gender and do well throughout their development. And we'll be answering any parent questions. A lot of parents do have questions, and so we answer those questions. The biggest piece of advice I give parents who are coming through the gender clinic at Boston Children's Hospital is to just be supportive. Sometimes you might not understand. Sometimes you feel like you don't know the terms, or you don't kind of get exactly what the child means when they say that they might be this gender. But the biggest thing you can do is just love your child and support them and just allow them to express themselves. That's the biggest protector as well against negative mental health effects such as depression, suicidality, anxiety that we worry about for our gender diverse kids and young adults. So that support from a parent is one of the best protective factors and one of the best things they can do.
A child will often know that they are transgender from the moment that they have any ability to express themselves, and parents will often tell us this. We have parents who tell us that their kids, they knew from the minute they were born practically. and actions like refusing to get a haircut or standing to urinate, trying to stand to urinate, refusing to stand to urinate, trying on siblings' clothing, playing with the, quote, opposite gender toys, things like that. There is more and more a group of adolescents that we are seeing that really are coming to the realization that they might be trans or gender diverse a little bit later on in their life. So what we're seeing from them is that they always sort of knew something was maybe off and didn't have the understanding to know that they might be trans or have a different gender identity than the one they had been assigned. So that is a growing population that we are seeing, and that's being recognized as being trans and able to be treated.
Parents do wonder if a child's gender identity is a phase. Sometimes it may be just a phase of development where they're exploring their gender identity and they're kind of getting a sense of who they are, but a lot of children do end up identifying as that gender into young adulthood and adulthood. The only real way we know for sure that they're going to continue in that gender identity is just to allow them to develop over time. And so that's what we recommend to parents, is to give them the space. Even if parents are concerned that it's a phase, we never want to tell the child that they shouldn't be expressing their gender identity or that they should be ashamed for the way that they're expressing their gender identity, because that can be quite harmful. We just want to give the child a chance to develop and explore on their own.